1099s are the mini bar. They are the mini bar of our services. Funny way to start out a lesson, right? But I want you to take this lesson very seriously, because I've watched too many bookkeepers treat 1099s like they are part of the service, like they are part of the hotel room. They're part of your core offering. The bed, the bathroom, use of the free TV channels, that's all included in your hotel room fee, right? But the mini bar is not. That's where the snacks and the cocktails are. And if you want that, you're going to have to pay extra. And not just a little extra, like 3 times what you would pay for that same thing out in the real world. Why? One word: convenience. Convenience is a powerful thing. And if clients want to use you for their 1099s, it's going to feel like the mini bar. Because otherwise, the whole thing is not worth the hassle. We're going to charge premium fees for 1099s, or else they're on their own. We're not going to worry about it. It's not our problem if they don't see the value in what we're offering and at the price point. Okay? So this is going to be important. I'm going to take you through how we do some of these things, but I want to make sure that I'm emphasizing 1099s are not part of the core package. They are an add-on that they have to pay lots of money for, or you don't have time for it, because it's going to be during tax season and they can do it themselves. They can go somewhere else. I've never lost an account over 1099s. I never will, because at the end of the day, it's not important enough to them to pay a lot of money for, which is why they want the convenience of it and why we're going to charge a lot of money for it, because otherwise, again, it's just not worth our time. Before we get into it, let's first talk about what a 1099 is. So here it is, the little 1099 form that makes such a big fuss in January. Really, it's a very simple form, one that's easy to create and really can make or break some taxpayers, right? I mean, depending on what kind of 1099s they get, it kind of creates this issue of what their taxes are going to be, especially for small individual taxpayers that maybe just do a few jobs on the side. Let me go over the sections here so we know what they are, and then we'll talk about some of the more popular uses and especially the use cases that we're going to focus on quite a bit as we are operating our practice. So first up in the top left, we have the payer's information. This is the company's information that's doing the paying. They've got their address and their TIN. They call it TIN. This is a taxpayer identification number. It's the EIN. If you were paying this as a sole proprietor and you didn't have an EIN, maybe you'd put your social security number in there. I don't advise that, of course, but that's what that's for. Then below that, we have the recipient, the person getting paid, their info. Now, this right here, this recipient's info, is what makes this whole 1099 process a pain in the rump, right? Because our clients are bad at getting this information. They want to wait until January and then kind of somehow make that your problem, that you need to go get this information. I can't tell you how many times I've heard financial accountants and bookkeepers talk about how they're chasing down W-9s for their clients, and I want to bang my head against the desk because I'm like, this is not your job. I mean, if you are getting paid massive fees to do that, great. But if this is just part of being a bookkeeper, no. That is not what we're going to do. So we're going to discuss all of that later, but that recipient section is going to be a big part of what we're training our clients kind of to get. Now, below those lines are the account number. You can kind of see that. I'll get my pointer out here. This account number section. This is optional. FATCA is a foreign filing issue, so you're not really going to have that very often. If we go over to the boxes, we're going to start with box 1, kind of back up to the top. This is rent. So if you pay someone rent, they should get a 1099 and have the rent amount populated there. Box 2 is oil, gas, or mineral right royalties. Okay. Box 3 is, kind of a tempting box to use, but it really should be rarely used. It's for other income. The instructions say for payments of prizes or awards or gaming profits from an Indian reservation. So there's very limited use of that, although that may stick out to you as the one, I'll just throw it in other income. Don't do that so quickly. Box 4 is withholding. You won't issue withholding unless a payer refuses to give you a W-9, okay? Or a payee refuses to give you a W-9. Then you're going to do something called backup withholding. And this is key, as we're going to teach our clients to make sure that they get these W-9s before they pay people. And as we do the books, we're going to scold them if they don't. But the ammunition that the clients have, which we need to teach them, is if they don't turn in a W-9, then they're going to hold backup withholding on someone's payment. So if they are owed $5,000, they may only get $3,000 of it, and $2,000 of it goes to backup withholding, and that is legit. You could not sue the payer for not paying you enough because they actually did. They just paid part of it in the form of withholding that they sent to the IRS. So you can use that as kind of a way to get after those W-9 folks. Okay, we'll get into that here later on. Box 5, okay, is fishing boat workers. They use that for proceeds they get as they come off the boat after a piece of work that they've done there. Box 6 is medical payments. You wouldn't issue these unless you were an insurer of some kind. There are other companies that do it too, but insurers primarily are the ones that use it. And then, there's box 7. This is the one you'll use a ton to pay people who provide services to the business. This does not need to go to S-corps or C-corps, but it does if a sole proprietor or a partnership, an LLC taxed as a sole proprietor, anything like that, they get a box 7 non-employee compensation amount for the services they were providing. So box 7 is an important one. Box 8 are payments to brokers. If you leverage your investments in some way, the payments brokers make to you if they leverage your investments, I should say. Box 9 is if someone paid you more than $5,000 on a retail arrangement, like a buy-sell arrangement, kind of like consignment. Box 10 is crop insurance that farmers get if they have crop insurance proceeds that they receive. Box 13, 11 and 12 are just blank. Box 13 is for rich execs getting these huge parachute payments when they leave a company that they have to pay excise tax on. Box 14 is used when attorneys are paid. And this one gets used some. I see this mostly when there are settlements being paid. And part of the settlement goes to the attorney as their fee, and part of the settlement goes to the winner of the court case. But you could also use this anytime you pay for legal services. That's okay. If you pay an attorney that's not an S corporation, you should use box 14 to kind of document those payments. Boxes 15A and B are deferred. They're these section 409A income amounts. They're deferred income arrangements, and then box 16, 17, and 18 have to do with state withholding if there was any, kind of like a W-2. Those are boxes that kind of match up with withholding, the state payer number, how much the state income amount is, that kind of thing. So, now you know what all the boxes for a 1099 miscellaneous are, right? You will never get that 3 minutes of your life back. So try and remember it and use it. For this lesson, we're going to focus mostly on box 7, as that is what contractors are going to use when they work for your client and when you have to issue a 1099 to show what was paid. Let me now switch gears and kind of show you this W-9 that we were talking about before. Okay, so here it is. The W-9 should be sent to any vendor you pay that could be a 1099 vendor, okay? It asks for their name and address, what kind of entity they are, their social security number, their EIN, and then they have to sign it. It's important because based on this info, we decide who gets a 1099 and who does not, and what the info is that we need to send, with the 1099. So this is the address we would use to send it. This is the EIN number we'd use to send it. So this is a pretty important document if you're issuing 1099s. And it's the thing that everyone runs around trying to get in the middle of January, and it's ridiculous. And we're not going to use that kind of process. In the next slide, I'm going to talk about workflow. But your clients need to send these to their vendors and keep them handy for you. You're going to ask for them later. If you're sending these out for clients, as I said earlier, stop it. That is not part of the basic package. It's not even part of the 1099 service that I'm going to show you. You can have a custom add-on for we will do all the 1099 work for you, but it needs to be expensive. So going and gathering their 1099s on behalf of them from the people they pay is not part of my 1099 service I'm going to show you. We're going to train them how to do it themselves and then provide you all of that in November when you ask for it. But, getting off of the topic of babying clients here and back to the W-9, businesses that need 1099s are, as I said before, individuals, they're partnerships, they can be LLCs taxed as a sole prop or a partnership. The easier way to think of it is the people who don't need 1099s are the S-corps and the C-corps. So if your C-corp or S-corp clients are getting 1099s, you need to go to those people who are sending them to you and say, hey, quit it. Here's a W-9. Stop sending those 1099s to us. Okay? And I guess there may not be a lot of recourse to get them to stop. I don't know that the IRS is going to say that they have to stop, but it does cost them something. So hopefully they would listen to that and say, okay, yeah, I don't want to do those anymore. Part of onboarding, whenever we onboard a new client, and later, as I'll show you in the summer email that we send out, the talk is about W-9s. We make sure, and you want to make sure that your clients are getting those before they pay vendors. They can hold payments until they get the W-9. That is okay. If they never get the W-9, like the people refuse to give it, then you're only going to pay them part of what they're owed because the rest goes to backup withholding. You guys can look up backup withholding. It's a pretty easy concept to grasp, and it's kind of a pain. So if you have vendors that aren't giving you W-9s, it's probably time to find a different vendor. But this is the form we're sending, and we're training our clients to send this out before they get paid. And that is a Herculean task. It's going to take you a while to kind of knock on their heads and say, you guys, you have to have a better workflow than this. We can't go get these W-9s after the fact, because then the people who we paid have no incentive to give it to us unless they plan on us paying them again. But we may not be. So the incentive to get us this information has to be when we still have their payment. So we have to train our clients on this. All right. So that's the W-9. Let's talk about the 1099 workflow. So here's the 1099 workflow, and we're going to be on this for the next few slides. 2 points that I want to make before I go through each aspect in some detail here. First, the hard work of 1099s is done before Christmas. If you delay all of your 1099 work into January, you're going to be, honestly, you're going to be hating life. And if any of you have done this before and had this run around all January trying to track down 1099 stuff, you know what I'm talking about. It has to begin, the work of 1099s has to begin in November. It makes for a much better filing season. And November and December are traditionally very slow times. Tax season is over. People are doing holiday kind of stuff. People aren't changing accountants and bookkeepers so you've got time to kind of do this, okay? The second point I want to make is that if clients don't respond, okay, to my offers of doing the 1099 work that I send them in November and then again in December, so we're going to offer this to them each year, and if they don't respond in November, December, then they don't hear about it from me again. They do not hear about 1099s again. If they just end up not filing their 1099, so be it. If they ignore my 2 offers, that's it. I'm done messing with it. I'm not going to worry about them. They're off my list. Now, I'll offer it again next year, but they're off my list for this year. You cannot baby these clients and feel like it's your job to pull them along as it relates to 1099s, whether they want you to or not. Because let me tell you something. It's not your job. The engagement letter does not say, and we'll prepare all your 1099s even if you don't participate. Even if you do nothing, we will feel totally responsible for filing those for you. That's not what the engagement letter says. Okay? So if you are doing that this year, you're going to stop it. If they don't respond to your offer, because you're going to give it twice, then it's their problem now. You're not going to worry about it anymore. Okay? That makes sense? Okay. So my 1099 season kicks off in June. June. Okay? I send an email to every client about the importance of 1099s. When they're required, when they're supposed to be filed, and what they need to get before they pay vendors. I've attached a copy of that email in the downloads of this course. I would recommend you find a time in June or July to send that email. Then you don't worry about 1099s until November. Okay? Then we send another email asking if they want service for their 1099s. What I was just talking about, this is the first offer of service. I provide the costs in that email and some of what we'll need from them and when. I tell them we're going to get, if they say yes, we're going to get back to them with many, many details. For those that don't respond to the November email, we send another reminder in very early December, like December 1st. If they don't respond to that, they don't hear about it again. If they do respond, we hit them hard, especially if they respond to that December one, we hit them hard with what is needed because the deadline for getting us some of these things is December 15th, and that's in the email. So if somebody responds in December, we say, hey, we've got a couple weeks to try and get all this stuff done. Then in January, once we've kind of exchanged emails and they've accepted the offer, then in January we file the 1099s. If all of the info is in by December, we file in early January. This is dependent on getting all the books done, but as I taught you in the previous courses, books should almost be done at the end of December, and then in the first week of January, you're just doing the last little bits, and you're ready to kind of finalize vendor amounts and numbers. So once you get bank statements and that kind of thing. So if it's later, if they don't get us all the information in December, and they go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm just now getting this to you. It's January 14th. Here's all my W-9s. Is there anything you can do? Well, sure. Yeah, we'll file your 1099s, but it's what we call the late season. Anything after January 15th is the late season, meaning they get a different price. Does that make sense? Meaning they get a different price. And if they opt into our service, our job is to do the work, but it doesn't mean we do it for the cheapest rate. Does that make sense? We're going to have different rates because by the time you get to the end of January, you're going to be doing income tax season with all these corporate tax returns you're doing via Halon. So you really don't need, someone rushing in and kind of getting worried with things. But let me keep going here about this 1099 workflow. I've got some more details to show you. So let's say the client has said, yes, I want you to do all my 1099s. Here's kind of the next steps. First, we run a report of the vendors for the year and decide which vendors are going to need a 1099. That report is usually the vendor detail in QBO, so we can get an idea of what the transaction volumes are. Anything that looks like a small business or individual, we highlight. We're going to kind of be more safe than sorry. So things like Verizon or utility bills you don't need to worry about, but things like Hank's handyman service, you're going to need to at least put them on the list for now if we need to get a W-9 from them. Hopefully the client already has it, and see if they need a 1099 based on how much they were paid and what kind of business they have. If you were super organized, you'd have every vendor already set up as a 1099 eligible in QBO, as I show you here on this slide on the left picture. But if not, run the vendor report and kind of doing things after the fact is fine. The more I've done this, the more I've tried to get clients in the habit of sending us the W-9s during the year, so that when we're booking transactions for that payment, we're setting up the vendor the right way as track payments for 1099. Although we don't use QBO for our 1099s, we still like to track them. And then we use that attachments function. You can kind of see it right here on the screen, this attachments right here. And we throw the W-9 in there. That way it's all in there. And as we're doing that, we're also logging in to the software here. But I'll get to that here in just a second. So once we know what vendors we need to 1099. Next, we're going to cross-reference that with our 1099 software that I'm showing you over here. We use something called filetaxes.com. I realize, for some of these folks, their info could have changed. So even if we have the right EIN, we ask the client later if they were informed of any address changes. Usually they weren't. So that's not a big deal. Anyone we don't have info on, meaning we didn't do a 1099 for them last year, that'd be the only way they got into the 1099 software last year, is if we did a 1099 for them. If we don't have any info for them, then we're going to ask the client for W-9s. And we're going to give them a list of each vendor that we don't have in our 1099 system already, but looks like they may need a 1099 this year. We send them that list and say, get us those W-9s right away. That email list specifies that we need it by December 15th. If we don't have them by then they may not qualify for the lower 1099 rate. They may end up in the late filing season because we only guarantee the normal 1099 rate for those folks who get things to us by December 15th. It is very important for clients, that respond to these emails to try and get you things before Christmas, because you're going to enter it and get it all ready for tax season and have a really easy and smooth 1099 process once the first part of January rolls around. As soon as the client gets info to you, I tend to load it into the 1099 software then. So I'm making this vendor here and to track 1099s just so we can track it in QBO, and I'm also loading their information into the software here. The key is that you get it loaded in before January, so all you have to do is go in and populate the amounts when the actual, 1099 flow is working, in the first part of January. You're just loading amounts and firing off 1099s. So getting this ready, that's kind of what we call the 1099 preseason work. And now, once that is all done, we're just waiting for the books to be finished and we can pull the final numbers for each vendor. Now, let me tell you this. This process is not great fun, okay? You're going to have to do a tracking spreadsheet that makes sure you're capturing each one that opted for your service. And then you're going to be loading all of this information all the time. It takes a ton of time. I say all of this because unless you're charging high fees for this, it's a huge loss leader in your firm and a total waste of your time. So remember how much work goes into 1099s when you quote people prices. You're going to be tempted when the client says, oh my gosh, I never knew this would be so much. My old accountant used to do it for $5 a 1099. Well, yeah, that's because your old accountant was an idiot. Sorry. Just was. I guarantee he was losing his butt on this. So listen, don't do this for free. Say, hey, I get it, but it's a lot of work. And if we want to do it right and you want us to do it, these are the fees. If you don't want us to do it, no hard feelings. I can give you the name of some softwares. You can go do it yourself. We are just fine with that. We'll send you the report of what these payment amounts were, and you can knock them out yourself. We will need to know if you filed them or not, because we kind of need to report that on the 1120S, which I'll show you whenever we're going over how to load the software, how to actually go into Halon and do some things. But remember, it's a lot of work, okay? Let me move over to the next slide. Next comes the actual filing season, right? So we're in January now, And we're going to run the final vendor amounts in QBO and use those figures to issue the 1099s. And because you entered the demographic info already, all you have to do is drop in the amount. So it's super, super easy. As you can see from the slide, anything that is filed before January 15th, meaning we got info early, gets billed $25 per 1099. Anything filed after is charged $35. If they don't like those prices, fine with me. 1099s are a pain. After January 15th, you'll be doing tax returns, just like I said. So be firm about the pricing. We use software that mail these. I just showed you the filetaxes.com software. They mail them to the payee. They leave a copy on the server, and they file them with the IRS. So this is just, once you get those amounts dropped in, it's just fire and forget. Once we click send, our work is done. Copies are kept on the software, and so I do not take a whole bunch of time sending the copies to the client. If the client asks me for copies, I'll send them to them. Otherwise, I just leave them on filetaxes.com. You can download them to your portal if you want to. I don't. I leave them there because I know they're just sitting right there and I can grab them. No clients ever ask me for copies of them. Okay? So that is the 1099 workflow kind of from start to finish. Once you get all these things out the door, make sure you're billing for them. We bill the exact same day as we file them. And we bill them straight to their credit card that we already have on file. Right? We bill them all straight to their credit card we already have on file. We don't ask them. We don't send them an invoice. We just say, here's all the 1099s, that were filed. We give that to billing. They bill it. And if the client asks how many we did, we say, okay, we'll take, the amount we billed you divided by 25 or 35, and that's how many we did. We're not getting a whole bunch of, back and forth going here. It takes too much time as it is. All right, so let me now get into kind of why 1099s are important, away from the workflow process of it and more towards why the IRS likes them. So if you were the IRS, you would love 1099s. They are the equivalent of tattling on each other, right? Tattling just like children. Imagine how hard it is to track, if you were the IRS, imagine how hard it is to track people working for other people, sometimes for cash. And if you're trying to monitor that system, how would you do it? Well, 1099s help fight those issues for the IRS. For the person being paid, 1099s at tax time really need to be an important issue. That's because the 1099s are totaled up by the IRS, by the service. And if your tax return does not have at least the total income reported on all 1099s, you're going to have a problem. So if your business gets 1099s, make sure you look at them. Make sure there's not an error on one of them where someone really paid you $2,000, but by mistake they typed out $200,000 on their 1099, right? The IRS is going to send you a notice. So it's going to be a pain. So review those 1099s before you file. For those paying individuals or unincorporated vendors, to be able to justify the deduction someday, a 1099 has to have been filed. That means that if you pay people and don't 1099 them, you could lose the deduction in an audit. So that's why it's important to the payor. This is true, too, of something called a 1099K. I didn't put a picture of it, but if you have credit card machines, you get a 1099K from the credit card company that shows what your total charges were. Your income for your tax return better be at least that much, or again, you're going to have a problem. Don't try on the tax return or on your books to net out the credit card fees and what the gross amount was and make that your gross income. Credit card fees need to be an expense. Your gross income needs to be that higher amount. Okay? Otherwise, the IRS is going to say, that doesn't match. They're looking for the top line number. They want your fees part of the expenses down below on the tax return. So make your clients send you their 1099s if they have a lot of them. Explain why they're important. Make sure your books are at least what the 1099s add up to. If you find a mistake, get to the IRS and let the CPA tax team, at Halon help you through that if you need to get a power of attorney. It's much easier to fix 1099s before you file than after. Because after you file, now you've got to fight the IRS about your return versus fight the IRS about a 1099. So if you can get a 1099 worked out, it's better to do it with the vendor, whoever sent it to you, that kind of thing, than just file and say, I'll worry about it later, because it's really easy for the IRS to see these discrepancies. And another issue related to 1099s is when a 1099 is sent to the owner of a s-corp, let's say, but the income associated with it was sent or deposited in the s-corp name. So essentially what's happened is the 1099's gone to the owner, their personal name, but the income was deposited in the s-corp name, and it's supposed to be s-corp income. First, try to get to the vendors that do that and say, hey, you sent that money to our s-corporation. You need to change that 1099 to our s-corp. Okay, that's the easiest way, right, to change the 1099. But if your client is like a broker, a salesman, or someone being paid commissions, they need to check some things out before you do even that. If they are not supposed to have this money go to a company, and the relationship means they intend to pay them personally, then that's not s-corp income. And that needs to be reported on the personal return. You see this a lot with real estate agents, right? The brokerage company means to pay them individually. They don't want to pay their s-corporation. They don't have a relationship with the s-corporation. So do not let them do something called nominee reporting without making sure that they can. Nominee reporting is what I have on the slide, where you expense on their personal return, you report the income on their personal return, and then you have an exact same amount called reported to nominee on EIN such and such and such as an expense. And what this does is it makes the income on the personal return zero, since there's income and expense of the same amount, but shows the IRS the income was reported on the S-corporation tax return, so no notice needed. It's okay in a situation where a true mistake was made. You can do this. I've had to do this. But if that payment was supposed to be personal, this isn't the right way to treat it, and it wouldn't stand up to audit. So watch your reporting, your nominee reporting, if you end up getting into a situation like that. And we don't really want people doing personal tax returns at Halon, so it's probably more of a personal tax issue than a corporate tax issue, but we're going to be doing the corporate tax returns, and we don't want to have to amend those later if the personal tax preparer says, wait, this was supposed to be in personal income. So we need to try and help the client figure that out. If they're running an S-corporation, aren't supposed to be, because the broker's paying them individually, we need to understand that with them. Okay? All right, so that's all I have on 1099s. And let me jump into the action plan now, and we'll kind of go over the main pieces. So first, set up your 1099, workflow and plan, including when communications are going to go out to your clients. Set it up now, because you need to implement it now. Remind clients during the summer about 1099s and W-9s. Send clients offers for 1099 service each November and December, and if they do not reply to either of them, it is not your problem. You're not going to worry about 1099s. Make sure you charge a premium for it, especially for 1099s that go out after January 15th. And remember, I made this a big deal, right? Remember, this is not part of the core package. They need to pay extra for it. All right. Well, thank you for watching. We are cruising now through Accounting 2. Only a couple more lessons left, and then you will be done. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.